you know, if I can get a camera into the water, into the mud, hanging off the cliff, hanging off the helicopter, those kind of things are what I generally would rather do that. And the kind of bonus for me with that is that I get to be in the mud and the water and hanging off the helicopter at the same time.
Welcome everyone to this online session. So you want to be an adventure director of photography. Today we're very lucky to be joined by the brilliant Rob Taylor. Rob Taylor is a director of photography for specialist factual, wildlife, science and adventure television. In 20 years as a camera person, he's trekked, climbed, hung off, swum through and flown over some pretty amazing places, all whilst holding a camera. He spent weeks living in hammocks in the Guyanese jungle on the search for huge predatory fish, jumped out of hovering helicopters onto the summit of mountains, dived with giant hammerhead sharks and huge jellyfish, chased animal poachers along the Amazonian backwaters, and learned how to walk backwards on uneven ground better than anyone else he knows. Rob's credits include Sport Relief, The Heat Is On, Bear vs Shark for Shark Week, The Heist, Sink or Swim, Kilimanjaro, The Bigger Red Nose Challenge, Expedition Mungo, Monster Fish, Extreme Wales with Richard Part, and Running Wild with Bear Grylls. The session will be chaired by Tom Hutchings, executive producer at Shine Television. So welcome Rob and Tom. Thank you both for joining us.
Thanks, Catherine. Hi, everyone. And thanks, Rob, for joining us. I mean, what a rubbish career that sounds like you've had already. We'll just get started straight away. There's quite a lot that Rob wants to talk about with great reason. So I guess whenever I hear about DOPs, director of photography, who work in adventure, when I was like growing up and hadn't started working TV, I was like, that's got to be the job that I want to do. But I didn't really, other than, I might have a camera, I didn't really know what a DOP does. So maybe we can go back to basics a bit, Rob, and just start like, what is your job? Like, where does it fit into a production? And why is it brilliant?
Well, hello, Tom and everybody. Thanks for tuning in. The camera department is technically what they call crew, a technical role, as opposed to what Tom does as an exec producer is more what they consider to be production roles. So I'm, as a director of photography or lighting camera person or camera person, whatever you want to call it really, they're all kind of similar things. You're holding a camera, obviously, but you're also in charge of the lighting. You're in charge as a director of photography, you're in charge of the camera department. So if there's more camera operators or camera assistants and drone operators and things like that. You're also in charge of lighting, which then means you're in charge of lighting. If you're on a big thing that has sparks and gaffers, you're in charge of the lighting. Or maybe it's not that big and you're just doing lighting yourself. And I really like it as well when I work really closely with production. When I get into a good relationship and I get onto a new series, say early, I can really work with the producers and the execs like Tom to work out the style of the series and how we'll do things and what it'll look like and how we'll light things and what cameras we use and how to make it look as cool as possible, basically. And I mean, it is a pretty good job, or at least I enjoy it.
It's an awesome job. Let's not beat around the bush. It's a brilliant job. I think if anyone who wants to be creative, see the world, and get paid to do it, it's up there, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. To be fair, yeah, it is a pretty cool job, and it's the only job I ever wanted to do, and I've managed to make it happen. So through a bit of effort and a lot of luck. So yeah, and it's a brilliant job for being creative, like you say. It's very hands-on. I like it because I don't spend that much time in the office, although there always is office stuff. I'm not very good at spelling and things like that, so it's a brilliant job for not having to write things. And I quite, you need to be physically fit and able. I spend quite a lot of time keeping fit for work, and also work keeps me fit, which I really like. And being part of a really good team, like working in a big team And as the camera person, in a way, you're in the eye of the storm. Like the whole team, whether it's a big or small production, but on big productions, you can have 30, 40 people from the office to location, and you're the one, and there's you and the thing you're filming in the middle of it all, and everything else is going around it. And that doesn't make you any more important than anyone else, but you wouldn't be there without anyone else's help. But it's pretty cool to be in the eye of the storm, it is a cool job. I enjoy it.
Yeah, it's brilliant. I've worked alongside you on quite a few occasions now, and we've always had a really good time, especially wherever we are in the world. We'll talk a bit about that in a bit. What are the sort of standout moments in your career that that have been your highlights?
There are loads, and there's different ones for different things. Sometimes you go to a place and you love the place, but what you made you're not so bothered about. Sometimes you love the pictures that ultimately I want to make a good program, but my part of making that program is to make the pictures look as good as possible. And sometimes I'm really pleased with the pictures we get, and other times it makes a brilliant program because the content's amazing and things, but actually the locations or whatever happened on location, the pictures weren't what I hoped they'd be, but the bigger picture is that it all worked out. And that's doing your job well as well. If you're working up against something and it's not really working out, but you make it work, then you've succeeded as well as you can, kind of thing. But I think really the places, I've been to lots of places, but one job that might stand out is diving with sharks in the Bahamas, in Bimini. Bimini is this tiny sandbar of an island, and it's got shallow blue water that's so blue it's called Bimini blue, and it's an actual color, and it's basically full of great hammerhead sharks. And the whole place, it's like 6 meters deep, 30-meter visibility, and it's just full of sharks, and they're all pretty chill, so you can just get in the water and swim, dive and swim and get whatever you want with them. But they are also, I remember that because usually you remember things where something goes a bit wrong or they get a bit sketchy, and I did get bitten by one, or kind of two actually. One of the hammerheads, I was lying on the bottom. So the scientists feed the hammerheads and they come in and take little bits of fish. And they're like 4 meters long. They're absolutely massive. And I was lying on the sand, sort of in the way that the hammerhead was coming in to take the fish. And I had my fins up. It's my fault. It's kind of bad diving form. And I had my fins up, and one of the hammerheads had a little nibble on one of my fins on the way in. But that, it didn't do any damage. It just had a little taste and realized it wasn't fish and let me go. But then just after that, because I was lying on the floor, some nurse sharks come in and they lie on the floor as well because they try to get any bits of fish that get dropped. And I had my hand kind of behind my back. I don't know why. I was just doing something with the camera or trying to move around or something, but my hand was over here. And one of the nurse sharks saw my fingers and had a little chomp on my fingers, and I realized, and it let go, luckily, because they're known to not do that. And then I had a moment where I was trying to work out whether it had got my fingers or not. I didn't know if I had any fingers left, and I had to, underwater, I had to do a little bit of a breath out and then go, okay, 1, 2, 3, and then I had 5 fingers left, so I was kind of happy. But my fault again. It wasn't the shark's fault. They don't bite people really often. I was messing around and shouldn't have been doing what I was doing.
Messing around on the job. So that shot of you filming, that's a giant hammerhead, yeah?
Yeah. A pregnant female.
Brilliant. What are the chances of that? How much hanging? That's an amazing shot and something to have on the wall at home, and hopefully the footage is even better. But how long do you have to hang around to capture those moments? Obviously, you'll go to an area that is, that these amazing creatures migrate to, but you can, the saying goes, you can never work with animals or children because they're so unpredictable. So. Yeah. How lucky were you with there? How much time did you have to waste hanging around waiting to see the Sure.
Well, there's Bimini, and there's a science research base in Bimini called Shark Lab, and the reason you go to Bimini is because they like research the hammerheads, and they know exactly where they're going to be and when, and they can, they do, because they do so much research, they do feed them to bring them in to like then be able to do research on them. So actually, the reason you go there is because that's the one place when you can just get in the water and they're there, because Shark Lab have put you in the right place at the right time. And often with wildlife, you can be hanging around. You can go and you can spend all day filming and, desperately trying, and nothing really works. But those hammerheads in Bimini are like the one thing that it is actually ridiculously easy to film such a crazy animal there.
That's brilliant. How did you get into? I mean, obviously that's like one of the career highlights. How did you get into TV? How did you sort of get up to the level of being an adventure DOP? It's not it's not a degree. It's it's a senior level in the camera world. So yeah, what was your route up there?
Well, like almost every job in TV, you start at the bottom and work your way up slowly. And it took me a long time to get into the world of adventure. But I think I was lucky that I was involved with a TV shoot when I was young, maybe 13 or something, I'm guessing, something like that. And I looked at the camera person and I thought, I'm going to do that. And basically I just knew I was going to, I was already into photography. The reason that I was involved in this reconstruction is because it was to do with kayaking, and I was already a kayaker and into the outdoors and adventure, sort of adventure things on a small scale. And I just saw this camera guy and was like, right, I'm going to do that. And so then when I was 16, I managed to get work experience. And while I did A-levels still, but I did work experience in every holiday and kind of weekends and things like that with a little independent production company as a runner, a little bit of like junior researching and sort of junior production assistanting and things like that. Then I did a year full time as a kind of internee level production assistant, researcher with a little production company at 18. Then I went to university still, but because I'd already kind of worked in like the industry, I knew a few people by then, and in the holidays and things like that, I worked in edit suites as a runner and as a camera assistant, a little bit freelance, like some of the camera people I've met would employ me as camera assistant for days here and there. So all the way through uni, I was already working in holidays, and I did a media degree. I did time-based media at UWE in Bristol, and they still do really good media degrees, although it's not called that anymore. And then when I left uni, I just went freelance immediately as a kind of camera assistant, a junior camera operator. It was just at the time when mini DV cameras were coming in. So there was self-shooting, like hadn't really started, but they were starting to give cameras to kind of junior members of camera department. So I started to shoot relatively quickly in this new kind of role of junior camera operator, but still kept camera assisting. The kind of job levels in camera department are kind of camera trainee or runner, camera assistant, camera operator, sort of lighting camera maybe, and then kind of lighting camera, and then DOP maybe, but kind of lighting camera and DOP are interchangeable a little bit. And so, yeah, just slowly working my way up, working in really normal TV at that point, not adventure TV. Just, nearly everything in Britain. I didn't move to London because I'm from Yorkshire, so I stayed living in Leeds. And yeah, I was quite happy working away, doing normal, in inverted commas, TV. And then when I was in my late 20s, me and my partner at the time wanted to go on a bit of an adventure. So we moved to Southeast Asia and we lived in Thailand for a little while. And this is where my career takes a proper, like, I don't quite know how this exactly happened and how it worked out, but we'll go into this more a little bit later. But I think particularly in adventure TV, it's quite good, or particularly if there's a very specific area you want to work in. Like for me, I always wanted to do more adventure stuff because I did kayaking and mountain biking and just generally being outside in my personal life. And then I did work over here and I kind of wanted to put them all together. But that hadn't happened to that point. But we went and lived in Asia and found a production company that made things for National Geographic, and they had a thing that needed people to the Monster Fish series, that they did a lot of filming in boats and on rivers and in rapids, in small kind of dugout canoes, because we were very remote in jungles and things like that. And so my kayaking experience was really useful to that. So it got me on that series. And then we lived in Asia for like 4 years, and I did loads for National Geographic. And then I was able to move back to Britain, and with quite a lot of luck, managed to kind of then re-establish myself in the adventure world in Britain. And now that's sort of like, I don't know. So I've been working in adventure TV mainly for about 12 years now, something like that. But it wasn't until I was 30 that I started doing that. So
it's funny how, yeah, one sort of job or one little turn in your life and you suddenly, you find your, I always think of TV, and a lot of people say this, is when you first start in TV, you're just getting like, to understand what's out there, what, all the options, what you could. So be it departments that you might want to work in. I like my first job, I did work experience as well. My first job was on EastEnders and I was there for 5 years. And then I thought, I don't want to do this. I want to pick up a camera and do, go into the factual world. And then it very quickly changed. Yeah, it's fascinating. And it just, the path is always changing, I think.
Yeah, I think it's important to say that it's not, it's a long, like a career is long, and it's good not to get everything straight away. Some people walk into the area they want to walk into at 24 or whatever, just after uni or before uni or whatever, and then other people just, you've got to work your way up, and your career will take you places that you never knew it would, and it'll go down here and up there and things. And so there's no need to be like getting into the right place immediately. You can control it a bit, and you can let it take time, and you'll get to a better place in the end.
Do you find that you use some of the skills that you learn in normal TV in the adventure world still?
Yeah, totally. What I would say particularly is there's a sort of set of skills which are making television, and for whatever department you work in, but for me it's cameras, and so it's understanding cameras and photography principles and lighting principles, and for TV, knowing how to like cover a sequence and work in a team and manage a department if it's a bigger thing, or like work with a director or producer, and there are all these skills which apply to any kind of TV or film production, really. And then there's the specialist skills, which is whatever area it is that I do adventure TV, but if you're into cars, it might be filming cars, or if you're into skiing, it might be being a specialist skiing camera person or whatever. So there's this much which applies to everything, and then there's this much which is your specialism, and then you kind of combine the two.
What do you think so your role as a DOP, adventure DOP, what is involved? What are the skills needed, and what do you need to excel at that role?
So there's the basics I just said, which is the photographic and television stuff that applies to any camera person, any self-shooting director, self-shooting, researcher, AP, whatever. They're all sort of your telly skills. For adventure specific stuff, for me, like I've mentioned, I grew up doing outdoorsy things, whitewater kayaking, mountain biking, lots of swimming in rivers, jumping off cliffs, kind of walks in the dales, camping, all that kind of stuff. And so, you know, I was able to just, if all I really had to do is take the fact that I enjoy that and do it with a camera, find a way to do it with a camera. And then, you know, and that can be complicated in that if you're camping with a camera, where do you charge your batteries? How do you keep it properly dry when it's rainy season in the jungle and 100% humidity? How do you keep it dry if you're on a boat with waves coming over it? You know, like how do you when you get into climbing filming, hanging off a rope, what's the best way to film like that? Or how do you deal with the fact that you're dangling off a 100-meter cliff and you're trying to like do a job, you know? And those things just, yeah, and this is where it becomes quite personal in that I enjoyed doing those things. So, and I had like kind of aptitude to do those things for my personal life. So I just had to combine the two. But, you know, whatever it is, whatever specialism somebody wants to have, if you're an amazing diver and you want to get into being an underwater camera person, then you just need to work out how to, you know, in that way around, you have to get the photography skills and then work out how to combine the two. It's, you know, and same for any specialism of any type.
Have you got like, you know, over your sort of 20 odd years, have you got some good tips, things that you wish you'd known at the start?
It's really good to look back and think about, oh yeah, like I've learned that in 20 years. I know that now. So, I mean, one thing is like, you will absolutely make mistakes. Like you cannot not make mistakes. So when you do, you've just got to learn from them and not do it again, and admit them, own up to whoever your senior person is, walk straight over and tell them what you've done. And, you know, hopefully you're good enough at your job normally for them not to be too cross that you've made a mistake. That's the trick. If you make a mistake every day, then, you know, you need to be thinking about whether you're in the right job. But like, if hopefully you don't normally make mistakes and then you do. I once recently formatted a card of rushes. That's pretty bad. And, but all worked out okay in the end, you know. And I mean, that is a horrible walk to go and see the series producer to say, you know, that helicopter sequence we just filmed, I've just written over the card.
That really expensive helicopter sequence.
Yeah, exactly.
I remember doing that. I think you only delete rushes once in your career. Because you're constantly. I remember doing it once, and I was, I don't know, about one of my early jobs, probably like 23, and I did it, and I blamed it on the camera, and they, yeah. Anyway, it was one of those things that I think they saw straight through me and thought, yeah, okay, whatever. Luckily enough, most people go, okay, we're all human, and that you know, things do happen. And then we had to do a big reshoot. But yeah, it's like one of those things you never do the second time, because you're always going to check on the camera and make sure that you take the card out, or you know, eject one before you want to do another. There's a lot of protocols in place now. But yeah.
And this particular writing over of the card was because the protocols, we were doing something a bit weird with like the way the camera was being passed to somebody else, and I wanted to make sure I got my card out before I gave it to them. And the card, you know, we were in the middle of like the nowhere in Australia, and like and because the protocols weren't followed, that's why I made the mistake. And I had to do the walk of shame. And luckily, I know the series producer really well and was doing a good job otherwise. And so like it was, you know, it all worked out in the end. So it was all right.
Not too expensive.
Yeah.
Looking back on your career now, what do you sort of look back and think, you know, things that are good to know when you're young and you're starting out?
One thing that's interesting conceptually, I think, in a way, is that I personally have, speaking for myself, you never feel like you've made it, in inverted commas. You don't get to a point and you go, brilliant, I'm a success. I've made it, and I could, you know, because you just, even if you do a job that you think's brilliant, then you freelance and time goes on and you do your next job, and then you're like, oh well, where am I now? Because I thought I'd made it before, and now I'm doing something else, and I do, like, so it's just a journey. Like there's no kind of goal at the end of the rainbow that you get to. So you've just got to enjoy the journey and enjoy the twists and turns. You'll get on stuff that you love, and you'll get on stuff that you don't enjoy so much, but you just keep going, and eventually, hopefully, you had a really good time while you were working, which, and I think that's important, because you definitely don't get to a place. And one thing I realized a couple of years ago, though, is like one of the few times I've had a moment where I have slightly had a yardstick to measure that, was that there was a program sort of when I was in my 20s with a load of celebrities climbing Kilimanjaro for comic relief, which Tom actually worked on. And what were you on that?
Fantastic program. Yeah, that was 11 years ago. That was 2009.
Yeah. What were you doing on it?
I was an assistant director, so like completely different sort of genre, type of work I'm doing now. But yeah.
And I remember watching that before I was working in adventure TV and thinking, how do I become the camera person that gets the phone call to go and do that? And then fast forward 10 years, which was a couple of years ago, I get a phone call and they're doing it again 10 years later, and I'm the person that they've called to do that. And I suddenly went, no way, I've actually got somewhere in 10 years. Like, I wasn't that person and now I am. So like, it was just a little moment where I was like, oh, I've actually moved forwards in 10 years. So that, that was pretty cool. And yeah, like
it's funny, I guess with TV, it's because technology is changing the whole time, especially in your world where we're not on tape or film, we're now on, it's all digital. It's not just 1080, it's 4K or 8K or whatever the next big thing is. It's like, it constantly feels like that is evolving, but there's no markers because you don't quite know what the next thing is. Oh, I really want to be an 8K cameraman. Well, by the time you're sort of shooting on 8K, there's 16K, or, it's a bit of an evolving world, which is great. Never, nothing's ever the same. It's constantly moving forwards.
Yeah, totally. And that's like saying, the world keeps going and you're just riding it, and there's a thing, and like, you can steer your career to an extent. So I always think there's a graph of this is things that you can control, things that proactivity, investing in yourself, like being, working hard, trying to be proactive to get where you want to get. And then this way is just life and luck and the right person giving you a phone call at the right time, or you're landing your amazing job and then getting ill and you can't go. And somewhere between things you can control and things you can't control is your career kind of going like this through the middle. And like, hopefully sometimes it goes over there, sometimes it'll go down here, and like, but eventually, hopefully you end up somewhere in the middle. And that's how I feel like I've done. It's I did try to do what I'm doing, but there is an element of luck and being in the right place at the right time, for sure.
You've got loads of, like, is that Peli cases behind you? You look like you're living in a kit room. Where are you? What are you doing at the moment?
I'm currently filming a series, or like an underwater wildlife series in Wales. So at the moment I'm in Pembrokeshire in a farmhouse. And yeah, this is the living room stroke kit room. And we're going diving for the next 3 days off the coast of Wales. Yeah.
So another thing that a lot of people might not know about DOPs is they love a kit room, and they love getting all their cargo off the plane or off the train, finding a room and decorating it with Peli cases and cameras. And we're in Namibia and we had this little tent set up in the middle of the desert, and Rob and our other camera guy, Andy, and our assistant Richie just like decorated this place every day, you know, you go to bed and there's a mess, a sea of technology there, and then you wake up in the morning, it's all packed up, and we're on to the next shoot. But yeah, you love your tech. We should talk a bit more about adventure shoots. So
yeah,
like they are out of the ordinary. Whenever I've worked on an adventure shoot, there's always like, you know, the risk assessment that goes with it is horrendous, because horrendous as in like it's a thick Bible, because we are, you know, often take sort of 3 planes to get somewhere. If you're in the Amazon, you have to take, you know, certain medication for malaria. You have to wear, you know, certain clothing to protect you from the wildlife. You have to sort of work with Mother Nature, or you're going to get beaten up by her pretty quickly. So what's a normal day at work for you? There is no normal, I guess.
No, there's no normal. That's probably key. That you've got to be very adaptable. And I, you know, like I don't just. Some people just specialize in underwater. You know, there are people who are way more specialist underwater people. There are people that are climbers who run all their own safety and ropes and can shoot at the same time. Like, you know, I'm not like, I'm someone who can be put on a rope by a safety person, and I'm quite happy dangling off it and filming. But you get all sorts of different micro specialisms. I'm quite generalist in that I do a little bit of everything, and I kind of feel like I've kind of made what I'd consider basically messing around into my career, kind of getting muddy, getting wet, hanging off stuff, all the things that I liked doing as a kid. I kind of now that is what I would boil down. My skill set is basically messing around in dirty and wet places, and so and it can be really hard, you know, like I always think adventures are and filming in general, actually, it's like a microcosm of life. Like within one day, you know, you'll be crying because something is so hard. And then you'll be like, oh, you know, just like the greatest feeling of accomplishment ever when it actually stops raining and you get some amazing sunset and you've just had 5 seconds of amazing light to film like this shot that you've been trying all day to get, or a scene really comes together against all the odds. It's usually weather, to be honest. Like whether you're filming in Britain or the Amazon, like the worst weather I've ever worked in was in Yorkshire and second Wales. And then after that, like the Amazon and like Antarctica and everywhere else. Yorkshire and Wales are the worst places to film for weather. But it is a bit type 2 fun where you've got to enjoy it being hard, and then afterwards you're like, oh god, that was amazing. And at the time you were definitely not saying that. Sometimes, other times you are. Other times you're swimming around the Bahamas with sharks thinking, oh my god, this is amazing. But you know, a lot of the time you're not. And like a few years ago I was filming a series for Animal Planet in Borneo, and we had to get a shot of a big crocodile out of the river, and they come out of the river at night, saltwater crocodile. And so we set a camp on an island in this giant river, and because from the island it looked across onto a bank where they knew that the crocodiles come out at night. And then as we put a whole camp up, we got all the camera gear out, we'd started filming sequences, and then as it was getting dark, or just after dark, it just became really clear that there was going to be it was tidal, this river at this point, and there was a giant storm came in. It was throwing it down with rain, and it just became really clear that there was some insane high tide coming in, and this island that doesn't normally get covered by the tide was going to flood, basically. So we really quickly, like all the safety guys, are like, right, come on, get this all off. So we had to take tents down, and we were all jumping in, and this is in the night in rain, just pure rain and wind and lightning. And so then we're on the river in lightning, so we get off that as quick as we can, and we find a long house in the jungle. Like people in Borneo live in what they call long houses, which is a bit like, it's like a wooden bamboo house where the whole village lives. It's like almost like a row of terraces made out of bamboo, and everyone lives in their own little bit of it, but there's a communal area out the front. And we asked the local people who lived there whether we could stay in their longhouse for a few hours while the storm passed, and they said yes. So we all put hammocks up and had a few hours rest while they were having an argument in this longhouse. And then we went out about, the rain passed and we went out about midnight, still raining a bit, but just not a crazy storm. And it took till about 3 or 4 a.m. to get a shot of a crocodile on the mud and going into the river. So we got what we needed to get. By, I think it was about 3:30 a.m. or something. And I mean, mosquitoes, dark, still raining. And then the boat driver said, "Oh, I didn't realize, because we were just going to go to the island originally, I didn't put much fuel in. So now we've driven around all night. I'm running out of fuel. So now it's 3 a.m. We're running out of fuel, middle of the river in Borneo." And so we said, "Well, we better go back then." So we managed to get back to where we'd set off from. By now the tide's gone down and there's like 300 meters of pure mud between where the water is and where dry land is. So we've been up all night, filming all night, been bitten by mosquitoes all night, and there's now 300 meters of mud. And we just said, we'll just wait. Like, it was awful, but like all the adrenaline, we couldn't face like just being covered in mud and all the kit being covered in mud. So we just sat there and waited for the tide to come back in, and all the adrenaline had drained out of us. So we just sat there in silence in this boat until about 8 a.m. Eventually the tide rose again, and we got out and went somewhere for breakfast. Like, it was a horrible night, but ultimately, I'm here talking about it now, so I'll remember it, always. Yeah, I remember times when I've worked with Tom where I was on a day shift and he was on a night shift in the jungle filming a Bear Grylls thing, and we would leave at the end of the day and it's like a quagmire of mud and rain, and like we're getting out of there after a day's work, and Tom and the night team were walking in, and I just used to look at Tom and just think, I'm so glad I'm not you.
It's good. I had the best time doing that job. That was in Costa Rica. It's amazing, wasn't it? Just you get great content in the evening as well.
Yeah, you got the best content, even if you did have to stay up all night in the mud. Yeah,
yeah, that was hard work. You said you just mess around. Now, the way I sort of interpret that, and I've seen you do this, is you wake up in the morning and I think it's educated messing around. Like, I remember being on Kili and I'd like open my tent, go out, and I think I'm up early before everyone else, but no, it's always like people like Rob who are up early because they're gagging to get the sunrise. And I think your version of messing around is, say, like time lapses. Yes, you've done loads of them before, but you've almost got to be in it to win it. You've got to keep trying new stuff, and be it a time lapse on a mountain or rolling around in mud, trying to like submerge a new camera and like trying to get the perfect shot dipping out of water. It's about trying things and having fun. And as long as you do what's expected of you, but add a bit of that to your sort of your working day as well. And, it just adds another level of photography to the project that you're working on.
One of the things I like to do as a camera person is, there's two ways to film something in a way, or there's a lot of ways to film things, but traditionally you might have, if you were filming somebody on a cliff, like abseiling off a cliff, you're on a long lens and from the bottom or the side or the top, and you're on a tripod and you zoomed in a long way and you're filming them like from a distance. Or you can try and be on the cliff yourself and be right in there, so you're really seeing what they're seeing and you're right in on their scared face, or like, or their hands like clinging onto the rock or whatever, and the camera's a lot more lively and a lot more in it and like immersive in the scene. And there's a time and place for everything, and that's a sort of another part of the skill of being a director of photography, to understand the different feels that you can give things by filming them differently. But in general, if I can get a camera into the water, into the mud, hanging off the cliff, hanging off the helicopter, those kind of things are what I generally would rather do that. And the kind of bonus for me with that is that I get to be in the mud and the water and hanging off the helicopter at the same time.
You've never made mud sound more so appealing.
I've talked about it a lot on this.
Yeah. What is sort of one of the most challenging or complex productions or aspects of a production that you've worked on?
I find, I mean, everything has its own. However long you work in television, every production has its own thing that's really difficult, and you think you've seen it all, or you think, oh, on that last production I absolutely nailed that, and now I know how to do it. And then you go on your next production and the same thing doesn't work. You've got to find a new way to solve the new particular problem or like issue or whatever, you know, kind of particular way that makes something work for the program. Like, so every program has its own set of problems and its own set of solutions that you've got to find with creative process and all that, and experience and things. But I find the biggest, most complicated stuff are the big kind of adventure, kind of reality type shows where you're taking kind of celebrities or presenters and things and doing big kind of stunts and big setups in the wild. And those things have a huge team, meticulously planned. And one that I did was Bear versus Shark, which is like Bear Grylls versus Shark for Shark Week on Discovery. And the opening scene is Bear flying in a helicopter, delivering pieces to camera, throwing chum, like dead fish, out of the helicopter to bring in the sharks. The sharks come in, Bear backflips out of the helicopter, into the sharks. We've already put a scuba set in there. He puts the scuba set on. There's an underwater, like I've been in the helicopter filming Bear do all that. We've got another cameraman already on a rock in the middle of the ocean who had to swim his camera onto the rock in a dry box in one of these pelicators. So he had to swim to get into the camera position. There's another camera guy underwater in getting the sharks. So Bear, I've been filming him in the helicopter. He delivers a line to me and then backflips out of the helicopter, puts the scuba on. He's picked up by the camera person in the water, films a load of pieces to camera with underwater comms and things on to the underwater guy, swims to the island, gets out, delivers pieces to camera to the camera person on the island, and then that was the first point we cut in like the whole thing. And there was a drone as well, so there was there was also a helicopter and a drone which had like made their own airspace, and like so they knew where each other were going to be. And I was the DOP for that, so I was in charge, and I was very nervous, and it worked like a dream. It was brilliant. Yeah,
brilliant. I mean,
it took weeks. It was a week of planning for that, basically.
Sounds rubbish. Laura's actually just asked, it's a really good question. How do you protect the cameras and the kit in the mud and the rain? And does the kit need all their own risk assessments in terms of how it breaks and gets lost, or do you hire the equipment? Now, this is like, I remember when I was first playing with broadcast quality cameras, and you think, oh my God, they're so precious, and they are. But they're also designed, and they're really hardy, you know, they're tough bits of kit designed to do stuff. And then I remember being out in Guyana and seeing a friend of mine rolling around in the mud with it, you know, and I was like, what are you doing? You're going to break it. And he's like, it's designed to do that. You just wipe it clean. And ever since I saw that, I sort of looked at cameras in a different way. Because it's like, yeah, he's absolutely right. Yeah, I don't think you go swimming with it. That's where you do need a case. But, you know, these things are hard bits of kit.
Yeah, it's a fine line, but generally the more you spend on kit, and you know, I'm lucky to work on TV shows that will pay for like top equipment, and that is the difference between the really expensive kit that is in the tens of thousands versus the kit that's, you know, in the like $1, $2, $3 grand kind of category, which is an enormous amount of money to spend on a camera. Like I told, you know, like I accept that, but I use those when they're the right camera to use. I use any cameras, however much they cost. But the the expensive cameras are amazingly built, and they're not waterproof and they're not dustproof and all that kind of stuff, but they are hardy, and they will, you know, we've been across the desert in Namibia, and when I got home, I opened the side of my camera and like literally like put a blow like can air on it, and like half the Namibian desert came out of my camera, but the camera kept working the whole time. So, you know, and the same with, I mean, I make things like, I make a lot of my own stuff. So like I don't really like any of the rain covers on the market. So I make my own rain covers that I think are good for jungles and like really heavy duty kind of rain covers. If it's really, really raining really hard, I will film topside in an underwater camera case. So I have I'll have a full underwater waterproof camera case just to film in really, really heavy rain. But you can film in with the right rain cover, you can film in incredible rain with a normal camera. And ultimately, I think camera kit is not meant to sorry, one of the battery chargers is bleeping it. You can, like, kit is there for me. Not everyone thinks this, but kit's there to be used. And again, I'm lucky that the cameras I own, I rent to productions, and so you get your money back slowly and that kind of thing. But I don't personally try to keep my kit pristine and then I can I don't sell kit for I don't use it for 5 years and then sell it as if it's new, like some people try to do. You get people who work in studios who are paranoid about people touching their kit. I mean, I'd much rather my camera got absolutely beasted in the jungle within the confines that I'm happy that it'll keep going. And that's just experience and, being sensible with it. But I like my cameras are all beaten up and dirty. Like a camera guy who doesn't do adventure stuff came into my camera room once and he went, oh my God, your camera's filthy. And I was like, is it? That's my new one. You just, it's all, I like them when they're used. Like it means you're doing fun stuff with it.
Totally. John says, what certificates and licenses have you got, Rob? And what non-TV skill sets do you find you've needed, i.e. climbing, diving, 4x4, driving, etc.?
I have, so for specific camera stuff, I have a drone license and I have the underwater health and safety qualification, which you can't, in British waters, you can't do underwater without having that in any, if you've been paid to be underwater, you can't not have that. Then, I mean, in terms of qualifications, other than that, I've done various health and safety courses. I have surviving hostile environments, like all the underwater kind of PADI rescue diver, that kind of level stuff. I've done specialist remote trauma first aid courses if we've got to go somewhere with a small crew and no medic, and there's not a lot of healthcare there. Productions will normally pay for the crew to do that. And then I just have I kayaked from when I was 4, so I can look at white water, or I can arrive in the jungle and look at a dugout canoe and make an educated decision that is a sensible boat that I can take a camera in, or look at one and go, I'm not going in that, because I've got that experience. I'm not a climber. I don't have any of my rope qualifications, but if you've got safety and rope riggers on the stuff that I do, if I need to do climbing stuff, there'll always be somebody running the ropes for me. And generally, this is where the messing around comes in. I used to swim down rapids all my childhood and jump off rocks, and so I can put myself on the rock of, on whether it's on a mountain or the side of a river, and I can be happy that I can walk across that. And where walking backwards really well comes in, I'm really good on unstable ground. And if you're filming a presenter walking towards you, you've got to be walking backwards. And so I just, and I've learned how to do that. but it just comes from time spent in the outdoors and it being what I'm into, really.
Laura has asked, is your work fairly regular, and what you do so specific that it makes jobs hard to come by?
I mean, it varies. Like every freelancer knows that sometimes you're stacked out and sometimes, you know, you're quiet. I'm quite lucky recently that I have been relatively busy most of, you know, like for the last few years. But you know, it really goes up and down. One thing I'd say about specialisms though, in some ways you're right that it can be so specialist that that you don't qualify for other jobs. But partly because I had 10 years of being a normal camera person, I've got all those skills, and I can go into somebody's house and light a nice interview, you know, like if that's what's needed. You know, I don't do it like in my 20s. That's, you know, half my time was spent doing interviews for documentaries or whatever. But I still have those skills. But what I would say is nowadays with like if you're interested in camera department, a lot of things nowadays are shot by self-shooters who are production people who also shoot, which means those kind of jobs where maybe ob docs and kind of normal TV is often self-shot. So if you've got a specialism that a self-shooter can't do, like underwater or ropes or skiing or something like that, you've got and if you can make yourself the best you possibly can at that, you make yourself the person that when there is a skiing job or when there is an underwater job, you're the person that gets the call. So actually by having a specialism, you can kind of protect yourself a little bit against being too general. Like I'm on a few like camera people's forums, and people do worry that their work is decreasing because of self-shooting. And the people that have specialisms tend to not see it so much. So I would say that whatever specialism fits you as a person, it's a good thing to have, and it can protect you actually, or almost the opposite of not being enough work. It means that the good work comes to you.
Good, that's brilliant. Jonas has said, what resources do you use to stay on top of what's happening in your field? I mean, I guess, you know, cameras are evolving all the time. Every week or every year, there's a new type of camera, a new resolution, etc. that's out. How do you stay on top of all of that? I'm actually not as techie as, I mean, I have to do it for my job, but it's not natural to me. Some people are like proper like pixel peepers and stuff, and I'm not that interested. You know, just online, all the kind of, I don't know, you know, just keep an eye out online, and I'm on groups with camera people, and you know, discussions and links get posted on those, and keep up. One of the things with TV is actually if you're working, say, doing small things under your own steam for yourself, like there's a million things that you could buy. There's 100 cameras that would tick the box for what you're doing. But in TV, certain things seem to like become the camera that everyone expects you to have. And actually, it sounds a bit responsive rather than reactive, but you know, there's no point in spending like 20 grand on a camera if it's not the one that your clients are going to ask for. So in some ways it can be good. You know, sometimes it's good to be ahead of the curve and buy a camera that you want, and then hopefully everyone else catches up. But other times it can be quite a good thing to wait it out a little bit, see what camera like production companies are going to ask for, and then get that one. That's actually one thing that I do, you know. Yeah, it just if only we'd all bought FS7s about 5 years ago.
Yeah,
well, not millionaires, but yeah. Pearl has said that she's done loads of post-production work, but left it as it didn't suit her. Do you think it's possible to start out again as a camera trainee?
Yeah, I mean, anything is going to be possible. Obviously, and I know people who've done this, so it is possible. It's a case of, unfortunately, unless you're very lucky, which can always happen as well, but like is taking some steps down and probably taking pay cuts, and then working your way up. And if you've got to here on this ladder, but you don't want to go to here, you've got to go down and join this ladder and go back up this one, you know. So it is, and you'll probably go up that one quickly. If you've been an editor, that puts you in a great position to know what you need as a like if you've sat and watched bad rushes trying to cut someone who's not covered things properly, you're going to be way ahead of the game in that respect. And so, but you know, like, yeah, anything's possible, but it's just going to effort and time. And, you know, I'd say that again, like careers are long and you can change things. You just, you know, it's effort and luck, you know. Yeah.
Well, a little bit of luck. Yeah. You're totally right about the effort though. What you put in, you get out.
You can steer it. You definitely can steer your ship.
Yeah. Brilliant. One last question. Someone was asking how do you schedule your life? Because work is sporadic and then you're off in the jungle or, you know, the arse end of nowhere. How do you have a work-life balance?
That's a good question, and I don't want to end on too much of a negative, but it is difficult. It's difficult. And also, you know, it's like my job is going and like swimming with sharks, and then you come home to go into Tesco's. It's you know, like it's psychologically it's difficult, and you are away a lot, which is difficult for relationships. And then really simple things like you book time off. Like anyone who works in TV knows this, but particularly crew, I think things are so last minute. And the difference between doing, like, if you get offered a big 2 or 3 week job, that's money for a few months, you know, like. And so if your holiday clashes with it and you've got to turn it down, you're either saying no to like money that you know is going to pay your rent for the next couple of months, or or you turn the holiday down, you know, and you lose your money and you lose like all the other people you were going to go on holiday with are annoyed with you. So like it's difficult, and there's no great answer, but it is hard. I do, for holidays and stuff, I do things last minute, and I have to like pay more for flights because I don't book them 3 months in advance. You know, I book them a week in advance and pay more, but that's cheaper than turning 2 weeks work down. So like that is a difficult side of it, definitely.
Not every day you go to swimming with sharks, but every day you go to Tesco's, that's for sure. Thanks, Rob. That's really good, really insightful. Thanks very much.
Can I just ask one quick question, Rob? A final question. John has just asked. You mentioned camera networks and groups you're in. What are they? The Guild of Television Camera Operators or Camera People. They're good. Bec2 is good for the union. It's good for learning rates and kind of having support from people. But both of those, I think the Guild of Television Camera People is good. They have a good forum and things like that where people discuss kit and stuff like that. So, and then there's all the Facebook groups and stuff like that, and just simple things, following people that post about kit on Instagram, Twitter, whatever. Those. There's no kind of, it's all just stuff that's out there to find. Yeah. Brilliant. Thank you. There's loads of brilliant comments coming in. So thank you very much, both Rob and Tom, for giving up your time to talk to us. It's been brilliant. So thank you, and we'll let you get back to the nice evening.
Back to Tesco's.
Thank you, Andrew. Thanks, good.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.